It's SEN Breakfast with Sam, Edmund and Kane Cornes. Appreciate your patience taking an unscheduled ad break. We needed to do it, though, just to confirm a couple of things, Kane, and this is what we can say at the moment. David Noble, a decision has been made on him by North Melbourne, and he will be stepping down as coach of that football club. I'm told an announcement will be made today.
Wow.
He told colleagues, people that he knows and trusts last night that he would be departing as coach. So he's done the ring around. The word has since got out. So David Noble, a short, unfortunately for him, coaching career at North Melbourne, taking over in 2021. But the run of results, as we know, what is it now, 14 consecutive losses, an average of 10 goals in those losses. There's been concerns over his, not just his coaching methods, but his demeanour. Concerns all around that club as well in the wake of the internal review that's being, external review that's being conducted by Jeff Walsh at the moment. We only did just speak about him reaching out to Leon Cameron, which is curious in itself. But we can say that a decision has been made on David Noble and he will be relieved of his duties as coach of the Kangaroos.
Well, it's a big story, and you wondered whether the performance over the weekend would have bought him some time. Many have speculated that this was the result that was going to happen. I've certainly got some sympathy for him, and the club absolutely needs to work out how they're going to right the ship, because it's not just going to be the coach. There's some other major issues that need to be sorted there clearly. So before the review is even concluded, they've decided to axe the coach.
Yeah, decision's been made, I've been told categorically. So expect there to be an announcement today. I'm sure the media will be invited along. It'll be a big press conference sort of set up, but a decision has been made. And David Noble rung colleagues last night to let them know that he wouldn't be continuing.
What a mess this club is in. So if you look at it, I mean, his record was 5-32. So no coach is really going to survive that. But the three recruiters walking out mid-season, what happens to Ben Amafio, the CEO, and those that were so adamant that David Noble was the right man to coach. So
and just on that, the people that make these decisions,
correct.
So not just Ben Amafio, but there's a lot of heat on the board there as well. And I'm parking Sonia Hood for a moment because she's new on the scene, but a lot of those board members have been board members for some time. And as we see with clubs that make, I suppose, repeated mistakes in this regard, the heat comes to the people who make those decisions. We've seen it, clubs right across the competition. That's no different at North Melbourne, who, despite being a smaller club, Kane, without disrespecting them, have a powerful alumni and a powerful group of ex-players, ex-administrators who aren't just going to sit by. And we've seen rumblings, even if it's just at coterie level, but that is manifested across the supporter base, the membership base, the former player base as well. So David Noble, it would be wrong to sheet home all the blame onto him. He's the coach, though. We know what happens to the coach.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So we'll wait and see what he speaks about today. And then to the North fans, who they would think would be a good replacement for him. They can't afford to stuff this up.
Well, the short-term replacement will be Lee Adams. Patch Adams will take over as the caretaker. What happens permanently, obviously, is a big issue for North Melbourne through the rest of the season. So they've got to replace a coach. They've got to replace their entire recruiting department ahead of the draft coming up this year. And there wouldn't be too many more clubs whose trade and draft period are more important to them than North Melbourne at the moment, and they're rudderless in that regard. So they have an enormous amount of work to do.
We'll take your calls right throughout the morning on your reaction to this, North fans. 1300 736 736. Sam Edmund with the big breaking story that David Noble will be stepping down as coach of North Melbourne today. He has told the people that are closest to him, Lee Adams is going to take over as caretaker coach. Now, there are two clubs without a coach. Where Alistair Clarkson fits into this. Would he go to North Melbourne? Could they afford to get him? We'll be really interested to take your feedback on this, 1300 736 736.
And we will try to get as many North Melbourne people as we can on the program as well.
We'll ring the club. Yeah, we'll ring the club. Obviously, they would, in these situations, you would know it better than me. They would like to announce that themselves at a scheduled media conference where everyone is invited, but that won't stop us reaching out to North Melbourne and those North Melbourne people as well. And we'd love to get your feedback on this, but a huge story this morning is broken by Sam Edmund, David Noble stepping down as coach of North Melbourne today.
And as we've seen at GWS and any club at the moment where the coach is either relieved of their duties like Leon Cameron or under pressure, is what happens next when it comes to Alistair Clarkson. So he played for the club. Could you see Alistair Clarkson coaching North Melbourne, and how much would have to change if you're Alistair Clarkson off the field for that role and job to be appealing for him. If Mark Brayshaw was to come back, we know they're extremely close. We know that Mark Brayshaw was in the running to be the chief executive officer. They went down another path. Those two incredibly tight and have wanted to work in clubland together for some time. So we'll try to flesh this out as best we can over the course of the next 90 minutes before we hand over to Jared Waitley. Just while we pause for a moment, Russell has been waiting patiently in Pakenham. Russell, you want to talk coaching as well?
I do, boys. Morning, love the show. Look, I'm a mad Saints and very frustrated Saints fan. I think the Saints might have jumped the gun of signing Ratton. As you said, you got Alistair Clarkson out there, one of the best sort of coaches going around. I don't know why the St Kilda Football Club didn't ask the question of Alistair Clarkson if he was interested in coaching. Because at the moment, you watch the TV and you see Brett Ratton and they pan to him. He sits there with a dumb look in his face. Does not make a move. Sometimes you just need to move the chess pieces around and something can happen, boys. What do you thought?
Well, I thought it was a touch premature. Now, that's who the problem is. Well, not the problem, but I guess the conundrum for clubs is when to re-sign your coach. And was there going to be another club that would take Brett Ratton? Probably not. So you had some time to make a considered decision towards the back end of the year. I said the same about Matthew Nicks at Adelaide. They didn't need to re-sign him when they did. And when you've got Alistair Clarkson there, you'd want to have a crack at that. But I think we've all admired Brett Ratton and the way that he goes about it. But did they sign him prematurely? Perhaps would be the thought on that. David Noble stepping down as coach of North Melbourne today via Sam Edmund right here on SEN. Your reaction to that? Tom is in Werribee. You want to chat about the Kangaroos. Welcome, Tom.
Yes, good morning, boys. How are we all?
We're good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, look, I'm a little bit disappointed with the news. I am a North fan. I have been for all my life. It's a little bit disappointing. I mean, look, Jeff Walsh is a professional, obviously. He knows what it takes to run a football club in the right way. In saying that, I just don't think that he's been given enough time, Noble, to really make an impact. You can't make a silk purse out of a pig's ear, and at the moment he's got a pig's ear down there. But yeah, I think the only way that this works is if we get Clarkson. I think that's the only way this works at the moment. You can't put another fresh coach in because the same thing will happen. So, yeah, it's certainly troubling times down there. Not a good time to be a supporter, actually.
It's a rough time. I mean, they seem about as low as any club has been recently. Things can turn pretty quickly, and it's just about getting the key people in those key roles. We've played footy for long enough, been involved in really poor football clubs, and the only thing that turns it around is good people in those roles that get the players along for the ride, and it's not just the coach. I mean, the list management has been a mess, as we've spoken about all year. The support around the coach is really important. The fitness staff, highly important. The leadership. So all of that they need to address, not just the coach, David Noble. It will be interesting to see what he says, but the review's not even finished. So clearly, the minute they decided to bring Jeff Walsh in, Sammy, he was gone.
Yeah. Michael from Cranbourne's texting, boys, as a passionate North Melbourne man, I was just reading this game. Now, this week has become tougher, and as much as I know we need change, I'm sad. Empty feeling in my stomach right now. Empty feeling all round. Thanks, Nobes. Bring on Alistair Clarkson. So that's where his text has taken us. Can Champion Data tell us what club has played the most amount of games the week after a side that has had its coach sacked or coach walked? And what does it mean for North Melbourne this weekend? And how do they go about moving on from David Noble whenever that decision is formally ratified, I suppose, from a media point of view, Kane? What about Ross Lyon to North Melbourne? That's from Darren. So it moves pretty quick, doesn't it, the conversation around who takes over next and the job that they would have in front of them, which is seismic.
And I guess the decision for David Noble to take the job, I mean, he really had to be convinced, didn't he?
He did
to take the job. It wasn't
Paul Roos convinced him.
It wasn't a
helped
path.
Convince.
Yeah, it wasn't a path that he wanted to really go down or was pursuing. Clearly, that was in the management, I guess, area, not coaching. So he had to be convinced with that. He, up until the weekend, was defiant about his ability and his knowledge of what needed to happen to turn the place around. But clearly, they had made their mind up before the weekend's performance because that did nothing to sway the board's decision to move him on. 1300 736 736. We'll continue to take your calls right throughout the morning. North fans, David Noble stepping down as soon as today, as broken by our man Sam Edmund, who was working the phones furiously in the ad break there to get this story up. It's an unfortunate one. It's always a sad one, but we'll take your reaction now. And we will move it pretty quickly onto who who does take the role.
Adam Simpson's name just came up again. How many times have they got to deny that? So it won't stop people spitballing about what comes next for North Melbourne and the job that person would have in front of them. Lee Adams, as we said earlier, will take over as the interim coach. Make the call, switch to Kogan Mobile. Melbourne Airport parking. Nothing beats $12 a day parking at Melbourne Airport. And our friends at 4D Garage Doors. Garage Doors redefined. 4ddoors.com.au. We'll get into the newsroom now, which means it's time for another McCafe coffee.